Hi friends, my name is Aaliyah and welcome to my channel Aaliyah Uncharted. Today I'm going to go over all of the books that I read in January. So to be honest, January is almost always a pretty slow reading month for me because I spend so much of the month planning for the new year and just trying to switch up my habits and all of that fun stuff. Plus I had a huge shift in my work life, so reading wasn't very high on the amount of time I spent on things. So that being said, I did finish 3 things, so I'm still pretty proud of that, and I'm excited to talk to you about them. So before we get into that though, really quick, I have to mention my sweater. There are mushrooms on it. I'm living my cottagecore dream right now. It's my new favorite thing. I had to tell you about it. I'll have a link to the sweater in the description. But without any further ado, let's get into the books I started the year off with. So the first thing I'm going to mention is actually a book I did not finish, and that is The Mercies by Karen Millwood Hargrave. This is a book I was reading for my book club, and historical fiction is not normally my thing, and so I was already feeling lukewarm about it, and then I'd never actually finished it before the meeting. I was spoiled for it. I knew I wasn't going to like it if I did finish it because I did not like how it ended, so I didn't make myself finish it. But I still read over half of it, so it bears mentioning. The Mercies is a historical fiction novel that takes place in 1600s Norway, specifically this coastal fishing village, a very small, isolated village way up north. And we have 2 perspectives. One is a woman who grew up in this village. A few years back, there was this terrible storm, accident, great white whale kind of situation that killed all of the men from the village. They were all out whaling, they all died. And so this became a very woman-centered, woman-run village because they had to get by. They still had to continue living. But the thing is, women can't run anything in the 1600s, and so the king or somebody assigned this town to a new man to run, because that's, again, how it was in the 1600s. So our second point of view is the new wife of this guy who was assigned this village. So we have these 2 points of view of these 2 women, essentially just as they get to know each other. They come from very different walks of life. There's a sapphic relationship in this, so I guess know that. That was definitely one of the selling points for me. There's also a lot of talk about witchcraft. This is right in the height of witch trial kind of times, especially in Europe. Some stuff to do about race with the indigenous folks in Norway. Lots of different moving parts. I will say it was very well written. The audiobook was really well done and atmospheric. I think it lent itself well to this story. Also, it was nice to know how all the names were pronounced. This was just not my jam. I'm not a historical fiction kind of person. I should really know better at this point, but it was for my book club, so I felt like I had to. But I don't want to dissuade anybody else from reading this because I do think it's well done. It is just not my thing, so I wasn't going to make myself finish it. All right, so the first book I actually finished in January is How to Be a Normal Person by TJ Klune. I picked this up for a couple reasons. 1, TJ Klune is one of my favorite authors. I love him. 2, this was my BuzzRead Reading Challenge choice for January. The buzzword was the 5 W's, so who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then thirdly, the love interest is asexual, and that is a huge part of the story. So all these things spelled a good time. So in this story, we are following Gustavo Tiberius, and he is a late 20s, early 30s guy. He owns a video rental shop that nobody goes to in a small town in Oregon. And he is just kind of that loner guy who refuses to really make any friends. He doesn't need anybody. He lost his father a few years ago and has kind of just retreated from everybody and everything. He's just generally pretty grumpy and not particularly friendly. This guy named Casey comes into town. He moves in, and he is an asexual stoner, which is repeated several times, so I guess it bears mentioning. He is the nephew of the bakery owner or something like that, and so he kind of rocks Gustavo's world and his routines and stuff. And Gustavo finds himself really into Casey, but he doesn't know how to approach a relationship with him. He is overthinking things. He doesn't know what to do because he's never been in this situation before. So he looks online for ways to be a normal person. And so this whole book is about Gustavo trying to become a normal person, trying to act like a normal person so that he could be a better partner for Casey. And this was odd. I will say that, definitely not probably my least favorite TJ Klune I've read, which is unfortunate. But let's see. Gustavo as a character is very endearing, and I did like reading about him. I will say he read to be kind of on the spectrum. There were a lot of characteristics of his that read that way. That's coming from me as a neurotypical person, so take that with a grain of salt. So he was a really interesting character. He was very endearing, and like you come to really care for this guy. And also I really, really appreciated Casey and how his asexuality is talked about very explicitly and at length in this book, because it really delves into the nuances of being asexual and also being in a relationship with someone who's asexual when you're not, which I thought was very important. And I really appreciated how it really dug into those things. The things that I felt like I guess, would you call it a gimmick of like Gustavo going through this really weird ass website trying to get instructions on how to be a normal person got to be a little ridiculous, because some of it you're just like, what in the world? And luckily Gustavo also recognizes when it gets bizarre, but like it just kind of kept going. And the thing that I had the most issue with is there were a lot of other conversations that could have happened that were framed to happen and then just didn't happen. I felt like too much time was spent on the stuff that didn't matter and not enough time was spent on the things that could have mattered. So I gave this 3.5 stars. I didn't dislike it. I had a good time reading it. Found myself laughing a lot at the absurdity of it all, but definitely not my favorite of his. Not where I would recommend anybody starts with TJ Klune by any means. It was decent enough. So if you're looking for something silly, go for it. The second thing I read in January was The Sunken Mall by K.D. Edwards. And this is a novella in the tarot sequence. The first book is The Last Sun, which I read last year and absolutely loved. The second book is The Hanged Man, which I have not read yet, but I'm very excited to do so. The Sunken Mall takes place between these first and second books, and so I really wanted to get to that before I started The Hanged Man. And it's very hard for me to describe the plot of this book because it really only makes sense if you understand how the world works in this series. It's like if you take a lot of different fantasy and magic elements and the modern world and just kind of smushed them together. It is not like anything I've ever read before, so this is like an urban fantasy series. So let me see if I can give this a go. This is following your main cast of characters from the first book, and they are looking for a lost mall. It was magically lost, as in like they were trying to move the mall using magic from one place to another place, and it got lost somehow. And so our cast of characters are looking for this mall for as a little fun journey, like literally it's like a fun adventure for no reason. They just decide to do it, and shenanigans happen. That's the best I can do. I really enjoyed this though because it actually does a lot of really good setup for the second book. And I could tell it also plants the seed for what you can anticipate to be future character development and future conversations that are going to be happening. So I'm really glad I read it. I don't think it's necessary, but it's a fun little thing. It's 90 pages. It's free on the author's website. I will have the link in the description for that. And it was just a fun time. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I love these characters. It was a really good time. I gave it 4 stars. The last thing I read in January was Redemptor by Jordan Fueko. And this is the sequel and the final book in the Raybearer duology. It is a West African inspired fantasy that is absolutely stunning. I read the first book when it came out in 2020, and I finally got around to the sequel. It was a little late, but I'm so glad I read it because my goodness, is this just a stunning work of art. I can't really go into the plot of this one a whole lot. So a brief synopsis of the first book. We're following a girl named Tarisai. She's pretty isolated in childhood, but then she is brought to the capital and vying for her spot on the future emperor's Council of 11. So the Council of 11 end up being the right-hand people for the emperor, and they're also magically connected, thinking like they can hear each other's thoughts, kind of soul bond kind of thing. So she's trying to get on this Council of 11 while also fighting a curse that her mother put on her. And the curse is that as soon as she wins the future emperor's love, the prince's love, she has to kill him. So she's trying to fight this curse, find a way to get out of it, and get on this Council of 11. A whole lot more happens. It's a lot, and then this follows directly afterwards with the repercussions of how that first book ends. So it was incredible. This was such a wonderful conclusion. I loved the way that it was written. First of all, I did read this on audio, and the audiobooks are just chef's kiss. Incredible. Would highly, highly recommend. Even if you're not an audiobook person, I would give it a go because it is so well done, so well performed. Could not recommend them enough. But even outside of that, just the book itself, the story is just beautifully crafted. It is such an imaginative world. This is like one of my favorite fantasy series because it's just so incredible. Also, I have to mention that there is yet again another asexual side character in this. Not a love interest, a side character, but it was so well done. It's touched on briefly in the first book, but really delved into in the second one, and I really appreciated the way it was done. They don't say the word asexual, but you know exactly what they're talking about, and just the way that representation was handled was lovely. I really loved how it was talked about. I love how it was just a thing that was accepted and that they really talked about, and it was so lovely. And I really love the character who is asexual. I love him. So it was wonderful overall. Cannot recommend this series enough. I gave this one 4.5 stars like I did the first one, and it was just, read this series if you want something new, something super cool. Just read it. So that's it. That is everything I read in January. Again, it's not a whole lot, but I'm still pretty happy with my first reading month of the year. And that might just be because I'm still riding the high of reading Redemptor, but I will take it because it was just so, so good. But I would love to know what you've read in January. So go ahead and hop down to the comments and let me know your favorite read from the first month of the year, because I would love to know. While you're down there, go ahead and hit that like button and hit that subscribe if you want to see more from me. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! I got my head out the sunroof. I'm